Hi, I'm Laura and I am ADHD AF. Seriously. In the interim between seasons 2 and 3, I've created these micro interviews to use the platform to share useful information to the ADHD community. I'm just a late diagnosed ADHDer sharing my lived experiences, which means I'm not a psychiatrist, therapist, or coach. I am not trained or even emotionally equipped to offer advice or support. And that's why I've gathered these golden nuggets of information from people who actually know what they're talking about. There will likely be swearing and sensitive subject matter, so please have a read of the description of each episode before ingesting these juicy morsels of information, or in other words, tidbits. ADHD tidbits! So, back to basics, bitches. The wonderful James Brown joins me again. There's something that I've been wanting to find out. So I think that I understand the definitions neurodiverse, neurodivergent, neurodiversity, but then they seem to be quite interchangeable, and people that I would think should know what they're talking about say them in a way that I think is wrong. So tell me, James, what's right?
With a massive kind of asterisk or caveat, first thing I'll say is technically everybody in society is neurodiverse. There are no two brains that are 100% identical. Even in identical twins, there'll be tiny little differences. So the diversity of our brains is the whole of society. So neurodiversity, if you like, is everybody. We're all neurodiverse. If your brain is developed in a way that is far enough away from what is considered typical, and I'm using that phrase very specifically, then you would be termed neurodivergent. Now, the reason I say than what is considered typical is I fucking hate the term neurotypical.
Yeah.
Because I think it others us as much as it others them. And because there's no such thing as a neurotypical brain, because the NTs are neurodiverse as well. So technically, neurodiversity encompasses all of us. We're all neurodiverse, but those of us who are far enough away from what might be considered typical are neurodivergent. Now, the asterisk and the caveat part is nobody can police your language. If you want to identify as neurodiverse and not neurodivergent, hats off, fire away, do it. If you instead tell somebody else that they shouldn't say they are neurodiverse or neurodivergent because it's the opposite, then please don't do that. Because actually, again, this is about people's lived experience, about the way they want to identify, the way they want to understand themselves. So whilst there is this kind of technical accuracy to the terms neurodivergent and neurodiverse, etc., if someone wants to call themselves neurodiverse or neurodivergent, they're both fine. That's their way of expressing themselves to the world.
You don't need to be the language police because it's self-identification. So if that's how somebody sees themselves, then that's totally fine.
It is. And I think it's really important that we don't be the language police. And it's rare and it doesn't happen often, but sometimes you will see people saying, no, you're not.
You're not using
X.
the term correctly.
You're not X, you're Y. You're not using the term correctly. And that's not really fair for the person that's how they like to describe themselves. And it's very similar when it comes to the disability question.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, some people see their ADHD as a strength or a superpower. Some people see it as a disability, and it is both and neither, depending on the person. So the word disorder for some people is very unpalatable and they prefer condition. It is in the medical textbooks, and therefore when people talk about ADHD and the second D is disorder, that's just what it's called. Again, if you want to call it a condition, that's completely fine.
Yeah.
If you are happy to call it a disorder, that's also completely fine. If you don't like being labeled as having a disability, that's completely fine. But some people, that label protects them in the workplace or protects them in terms of maintaining their functionality and their health and getting support. Language is really powerful.
It is, yeah.
And I think the key thing is we all have our lived experience of ADHD. ADHD to me is, I can say in my head ADHD is, but that's for me. Yeah. When people start saying to other people ADHD is, using absolute terms, you don't know that person's lived experience.
Do you want me to point at things? And
yes, I'm doing
for you?
You can end up invalidating somebody's experience by telling them that. One of the common things we will often see, particularly on TikTok, etc., is people, when they share their experience, might say something like, if you do these 6 things, then you've got ADHD. Then they'll list kind of 6 things that might, some of them are based on the official symptoms, some of them are just things that some people with ADHD commonly do. Now, if you are purely inattentive presentation and therefore you're not hyperactive or impulsive, and one of those 6 things is you can't sit still, you have to fidget, you might watch that and think, oh,
I don't have it then.
Yeah, that's not me.
Yeah.
And that might stop you from accepting yourself, seeking a diagnosis. It might make you challenge your diagnosis. So we have to move away from this approach that our ADHD is the same as everybody else's, because we are neurodiverse as a neurodivergent population. We're all different.
See, that's where I was getting lost in it, because my understanding was that we are neurodivergent, you and I, and actually, no, I cannot think of a single neurotypical person that I know. If neurotypical Sue out the window came into this conversation right now, we would then be, the 3 of us would be neurodiverse. But if she went away, this group would be neurodivergent. But that's not true.
No, but it is and it isn't. So we would both be neurodivergent, but equally at the same time, we would be neurodiverse. Now, within
our neurodivergence.
Yes. Best way to explain this is... The best way to explain this is if you look at the tests that you do, particularly the ASRS, the Adult ADHD Self-Report Scale, 9 symptoms for inattentiveness, 9 symptoms for hyperactivity/impulsivity. As an adult, you need to have 5. So let's say, Laura, you were positive for 1 to 5, and I was positive for 5 to 9.
Yeah.
Then we would have different behaviors and traits.
Yeah.
And that's all you need to know to say that we're not all the same. We all have different challenges, different strengths, different traits. Some of us mask and develop coping strategies so well that we don't even fill that form in appropriately, because you'll think, well, no, I don't lose anything because everything's got an Apple AirTag on.
Yeah, I can recognize that a lot. There are a lot of people that I've met in my life that are masking so much even from themselves that they don't realize that they're not seeing their own behavior. What was I just going to say? Oh, that was it. I have been told off in the past for saying I am ADHD AF. Ooh. I do it in a very self-aware way so I can get away with the joke because I'm juvenile. Yeah. It's funny because if you were to ask me out of the context of the joke, I definitely would say I have ADHD. I would say that. I wouldn't say I am ADHD. I'm just saying I'm ADHD as fuck. But it's funny that it triggers people because, again, I wouldn't really care what anybody said about themselves. Like that's up to them. Yeah.
And again, that's really powerful because this externalization of how we view ourselves, and sometimes that comes from a state of fragility of not having the confidence to not care what other people say about themselves. But if you look at that, do I have or do I live with ADHD question, if you look in the ADHD community, it's roughly 50-50. Roughly half would say I've got or I have ADHD, and roughly half would say I live with ADHD. And again, if you can describe your lived experience, your neurodivergence, your ADHD, your health, you can describe it in any terms that you want to, that make sense to you and might make sense to people around you. And again, it comes back to, if somebody else describes themselves differently, just let them.
The whole too much tour came about because somebody was saying that I was too much online. And I do remember just thinking, for fuck's sake, I thought that this was a place where I fit in because of that diversity within neurodivergence. There are people that are going to be sensitive to sounds that don't need me cackling like a witch in a high-pitched voice in their ear. And it does make sense. There is no one size fits all, which is why we don't necessarily need pointed videos. We just need to be more aware that there is such diversity within it and just be accepting because their experience is as valid and important as ours is, even if it looks completely different.
That resonates with me because some of the comments I've received, which have just destroyed me, I was called a dick recently for the way in which I present myself on our podcast, and it just, I don't know why I get very little RSD actually about very specific things, but that destroyed me. And for anybody that feels,
I'm sorry I laughed. It's just I get
listen, we there was a long segment of a recent podcast where we talked in length about this particular comment, but I got some lovely feedback. It's from people saying, oh, no, don't listen to them, etc. This is really important. If you're one of the people that feels that you should or have the right to or need to make a negative comment about somebody else in the community and how they present themselves, first ask yourself, would I want somebody to do that to me? When you know about RSD, when we all know that we've got it and people will still make these public comments, really just turn inwards and say, would I like to hear something like that about me? And if not, then maybe I shouldn't say that about somebody else that's part of our family.
100% our family. I don't like Neurospicy.
Do you not? Interesting.
No, it just, there's nothing wrong with it. I never really say that because respect to anybody who wants to call themselves whatever they want to call themselves. I was talking in Morning Body Doubling the other day, and somebody said, oh, I hate Saltbae, it's shit. And I got well annoyed. I was like, excuse me. The point is, I don't think that you should ever say that anything is shit or bad, because somebody likes it. And the truth is, especially with our kinds of brains, joy is hard to fucking come by. So don't piss on anybody else's parade. So to all you Neurospicies, I salute you, enjoy your title. It just isn't for me. And that's it.
Yeah, there's a lot of power in that. I have anhedonia, so I don't feel joy. I imagine it's nice. But listen, you're absolutely right. Just two things quickly. I'm amazed that Saltbae is the hill on which you're willing to die. When it comes
my God, I will die on that hill every fucking day. I watch it 3 times in a week.
And the other thing, I've obviously forgotten. Fuck's sake.
That's a perfect way to end it, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, no, that's it. Fucking yes, got it. Trying to distill a complicated thing into a simple answer, or trying to explain or describe a complicated situation or something that's open to interpretation with absolutes is never a good idea. So saying this is bad, this is brilliant, this is, it's much better to say, I think this is, I find this
I
is,
don't
because
like
then you're,
this is not for me.
Exactly. Then you're, but I think it's a human nature thing that people have strong opinions and they like to say, no, that's Mrs. Brown Boy's that shit. I mean, it is empirical.
I think I can do an exception for the rule.
It is, but there will be, I mean, clearly millions of people, because it was so popular, would say, no, it's not shit, actually, it's really funny, and therefore I still say it's shit.
I think I said Saltbae instead of Saltburn, which is funny.
You did say Saltbae. I thought, and I said the Springfield guy.
But that's amazing. Why it's funny, because that's how I remember the title of the film, but I did actually mean the film at that point, Saltburn.
Amazing.
I hope you enjoyed that tidbit from an expert. If so, please comment in the Q&A on Spotify or leave a review wherever you're listening, and I might just keep creating them alongside season 3, which is coming right up with some full-length interviews with absolutely legendary ADHD AF guests. If, like me, late diagnosed ADHD left you feeling like an alien, you are not alone. Come and connect with the community at ADHD AF Alien Nation Live Tour, an intergalactic, huntastic expedition invading 14 UK cities this spring-summer to raise ADHD awareness and connect local ADHDers. Tickets are available via the link in the blurb of this episode and on adhdsfemales.com/events. These very special live shows explore going from the feelings of alienation to discovering an alien nation. There's a whole planet of us. I hope to see you in real life there, and or chat to you on Discord or over Zoom on the online peer support community Planet ADHD AF.